Hi, I'm Bobby Halton, Editor-in-Chief of Fire Engineering Magazine, and this afternoon we have the tremendous pleasure to be able to sit down with Fire Chief Mitch Randles from Joplin, Missouri. On May 22nd at 5:41 p.m. 2011, the city of Joplin was literally torn in half by an F4, F5 tornado that went for 14 miles through the length of Joplin, Missouri. About a mile wide in some spots, but 14 miles of devastation. During that time, the Joplin Fire Department remained on duty. They responded in a heroic and courageous fashion and did tremendous work. There are several dates in the American Fire Service that we all recognize. May 22nd is going to become one of those dates, like 9/11, where incredible courage, incredible sacrifice, incredible dedication were common among all the men and women of this organization. They never faltered, they never hesitated, they never put themselves ahead of the people of Joplin and the city of Joplin. They put themselves second in every instance, and in some cases third, despite losing their own homes, despite having their stations destroyed, despite having unimaginable devastation. They persevered, they innovated, they created, they did what they'd planned to do, they did above and beyond what they'd planned to do, and they set an example, a bar for all of us to try to live up to. And for that, we thank you. And we're very honored to have the leader of this incredible organization with us, a man who was born and raised in Joplin, Missouri.
Yes.
And has had 20 years of service to the city of Joplin and currently sits as the fire chief of this proud and noble organization. And Chief, thank you for allowing us to spend some time with you.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming up and talking with us.
Well, no, we're honored to be here and thank you for the time. So your family is Joplin. How many generations have been Joplin folks in the family?
Well, as far back as I can recall, you know, my family and my wife's family both were born and raised here, so at least 2 or 3 generations back, either Joplin or Webb City area. So. And
you've seen Joplin grow. I mean, Joplin's the 4th largest city in the state of Missouri.
Right, and yeah, over the years, you know, they've made you know, tremendous strides and has been moving forward. So.
It's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful city. For the folks that haven't been to Joplin, it's almost picturesque. It's got a beautiful downtown with, you know, the old 1940s style buildings with the ornate cornices and things of that nature. And then it had the residential district, which unfortunately was destroyed. Beautiful homes. So what I've been telling folks to do is to go to those Google Earth pictures before, so you can have an idea of these picturesque neighborhoods that were just gorgeous. I mean, it's where, you know, where people would want to live. Obviously, it's a great place to live.
Right, and I agree. And you know, the city has really worked hard over the last several years to you know, maintain and have a rebirth of the history of the city of Joplin, back to the, you know, the 20s to the 40s, where the you know, basically the mining boom was going on here, and you know, the city really embraces its history. So
and you can see it. You can see the buildings that have been preserved. We call America a disposable nation, but there's a lot of cities in America that didn't fall prey to that and are embracing the restoration of these gorgeous buildings, these wonderful buildings. If you wouldn't mind, and I know it's painful, and we should probably tell everyone that the chief lost his home. All your family safe, though?
Yes, they are all safe.
So, but many, 153 people lost their lives that day.
Yeah, actually we're now at 158 as of this morning.
158 as of this morning. So it was the deadliest tornado in the history of the United States.
It's very close. I think we are now, yes.
Well, I guess since we kept records and you know, maybe way back in the day, but as far as we know, this was the deadliest tornado.
Yes.
So if you don't mind, and I know it's painful, but if you don't mind, take us back to May 22nd, 5:30 p.m. Where were you? What were you doing?
Well, I was actually at my son's high school graduation. He graduated from Joplin High School. We had just finished the ceremony when I got a call from my emergency managers, you know, telling me that the weather was getting pretty bad, that they were getting ready to issue tornado warnings, and that you know, I probably needed to think about getting to work. And so as we were leaving, you know, the graduation ceremony, you know, I was going to take my wife and my kids home, and then you know, get in uniform and go ahead and come to the station and you know, kind of do our normal storm routine that we have when events like this, well, not events like this, but when normal weather things happen.
So what is it? Well, just to interrupt you. What is the normal storm routine? What would the men and women do?
Well, typically our emergency manager and a secondary chief officer would come in and monitor the weather and just be here to help our dispatchers and our on-duty folks make that decision on sounding storm sirens, on the path of the storm, and alerting the citizens and just the normal things that go into the decisions that are made by any of the towns that are in the Midwest and in Tornado Alley. So.
Right, which nowadays goes from basically California to Ohio.
Yeah.
While I was in Boston just 3 or 4 weeks ago, 2 towns were leveled by an F4.
Yeah.
In Boston, to Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So it's about 5:30 p.m. You're leaving your son's graduation. You get the call. It might be time to do a weather watch or get ready.
Yeah, and I'd started to, like I said, to take my wife and my kids home, and just for some reason, I just got a feeling that I probably needed to get on into work. So we turned instead of going home, and I just brought them here with me, and got to the station about 5:35 or so, and just a few minutes beforehand. The emergency manager and I was watching the live radar that we have available to us here, and when we got a report of a tornado on radar, and it was on the western edge of town, we went ahead and sounded the sirens for a second time, we called off responses by the fire crews, and instructed them all to head for cover as well. And then just a few minutes later, we started getting reports of damage and debris, and the tornado hit the western side of town.
So it came from the west, and the Joplin's kind of a rectangular city.
Yeah.
And it was almost dead center, just a little bit south of dead center as it looks on the maps, and just started coming through.
Right.
And so you're here, physically here, which is downtown.
Right.
And just a little bit north of the storm line. The storm line's about a half mile, quarter mile, a little bit off. So you're here with and then you have a crew here with 2 engines and.
They run a ladder truck. So.
A ladder truck out of here. So you have a crew here. So as it starts to come through, what was the first major part of Joplin it hit? Is it the hospital out there? Is that St. John's the first major?
Yeah, it actually touched down out in one of our neighborhoods on the west side of town, actually almost right on top of the site where we're getting ready to build a new fire station, Fire Station 6.
Wow.
Progressed west through town. It really intensified once it got to about Schifferdecker road that's here in town, which was once again on the west side of town. Really intensified once it got to Maiden Lane, which is where St. John's Hospital is and where my fire station number 2 is.
So there's currently 5 fire stations. You're planning a 6th. You have your on-duty strength is about 22, 23 men?
24 is what a shift
24.
is, and then of course we typically have some vacations and stuff in there. So.
And your total strength, Chief, is?
80.
80 men and women. Okay. So you have 80 men and women available to you. Right now you've got 24 on duty. This horrible tornado is bearing down on the city. You've got your people under cover. What happens next? You're here. What do you start hearing?
Well, probably the next thing that we hear is the crew from Fire Station 2 call in stating that they've been hit by the tornado, and that their engine is, of course, out of service, and the station's been destroyed. Destroyed.
Now, how did they stay safe? Where were they? What kept them safe?
Well, it's a station that was built back in the 80s, and once again, Type 5 or wood frame construction. They got into an interior restroom in the captain's bedroom and area, and basically the 4 of them hunkered down in a shower with a couple of mattresses over them as the tornado basically disassembled the building.
Wow. Wow, God bless them, and they survived.
Yeah. They survived without a scratch on them. So.
Not a scratch on them.
Yep.
So you've got these 4 firefighters out there. Their engines disabled, but they're okay.
Right.
So radios are still working.
Absolutely. We just installed a new digital 800 trunk system back probably a couple, 3 years ago, and it performed flawlessly throughout the event.
So now you've got reports. Station 2 has been hit. You know that much. You know your men are okay.
Right.
And I don't mean to use men pejoratively, men and women, whatever
Right.
they were. But so your crew's good, and you're still here.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, had the tornado come all the way through yet, or were they reporting in early?
They were reporting in early. Of course, they're on the far west edge of town, so they were reporting in very early. The tornado was still progressing through town at that time.
And give us an idea, for those of us, I currently live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I'm starting to learn about tornadoes, but I'm a New York City kid, and we actually had a safe room put into our house before your tornado.
Right.
After your tornado, 3 people in my neighborhood put in safe rooms, and I was
Right.
like, God bless you for that. And routinely during storms, our neighbors will show up at our home because they know we have one. And we always tell them it only fits 8 people. Shortly after your tornado, we had like 20 neighbors show up. So it was an
Yeah.
interesting storm. And after that, everyone decided to get their own. But the men are safe, you're safe, this tornado. So what I'm trying to get to is, how big is a tornado's footprint? In other words, it's hard for people picture tornadoes as being very isolated, but
Right.
this thing is up to a mile wide.
Right.
And so what's the circumference around? Is it like a mile all the way? Is it like is the diameter of it a mile, you think? Is that how it works? 'Cause
Yeah, I think at its widest point it was probably about a mile in width, and the damage pass was at least a mile for most of it through the center of town. The actual, I guess what you would call the catastrophic devastation area was about 8 to 10 blocks wide at its widest part in town. For the majority of town, it was probably about 6 to 7 blocks wide.
But you're not a mile, or even say, 8 blocks, a half mile. You're not out running that in a car.
Oh, no.
If you're in the path of that, that's.
Yeah, and you
What's
got
its speed on the ground, Chief? What does it do there?
Well, and they were talking about how slow moving this one is. Most tornadoes that come through the Midwest are fairly quick moving or rapid moving, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. The mileage I've heard on this one is like 20 to 25.
So this thing's just lumbering through.
Correct.
And the wind speeds were?
Over 200 miles an hour is all the weather service will tell us. We saw several things that are just incredible to believe. We saw vehicles literally wrapped all the way around trees and touching each other on the two ends on the other side.
Bumper to bumper,
Yeah, bumper
wrapped
to bumper,
around.
wrapped around trees. We saw 2x4s and pieces of wood or other materials that were drove through homes, concrete walls. We had one 2x4 we found that we've got a picture of that had actually been drove through a street curb, a concrete street curb, and penetrated it, probably 5 to 6 feet through.
Oh my goodness.
I know at my house, when I finally got out there a few days later, I found a curtain rod that had completely penetrated the exterior wall of my home. And I'm talking, a little small metal curtain rod that had penetrated through a 2x4, insulated wall on a home and completely through into the sheetrock. There was it was probably about 6 foot long, about 2 foot was hanging out the outside, and about 3 foot was inside of it, and the rest of it was in the wall.
So here's this mile-wide monster with 200-mile-an-hour winds. It's just devastated Station 4, coming through the city.
Yeah.
And you're hunkered down here with your wife and kids.
Yeah.
And then what starts happening? What are you hearing now? How does this thing progress?
Well, of course, we heard that Station 2 had been hit, so we've got the confirmed tornado on the ground. We've got the confirmed damage. From our emergency plans, it's obvious that we're going to need assistance. And so, at this point in time, we don't know that it's the half mile or mile wide. We don't know how far it's going to go. But I get my battalion chief that was on duty that day to start calling for mutual aid from our neighboring departments. My emergency manager start setting up the EOC and contacting department heads, and basically start calling back folks to get them in so we can start to handle and respond to the incident.
So phones were still working, or was it mostly cell phones and things at that point?
No, phones were still working. Cell phones were doing okay outside of the damage area. Within the damage area, of course, once again, the cell phones for the first 24, 48 hours were pretty much useless. You had some texting ability, but as far as voice conversations, for about 2 to 3 days, you just didn't have.
Because all the towers are gone.
Because all the towers are gone, and all the power is down to the towers that are left. So.
Wow. Wow.
But shortly after that, pretty much as soon as 2 had said they'd been hit and had been destroyed, I told my battalion chief I was going to go out and just check on the 2 crew, make sure they were okay, kind of survey that, and then start just a quick
Windshield survey.
Yeah, survey of you know, the extent of the, you know, because you know, first thing we had to do is figure out, you know, how bad have we been hit? You know, how long is this thing? How bad is it? And you know, what are our capabilities that are left? And so I head for Station 2.
Now, were both your kids with you, or?
Yes, both of them were
So
with
you
me.
knew your family was here, and
Yep, knew the family was here and was safe, and my wife and son had actually believed they saw the tornado go past. They were down trying to get some cell phone reception, the Warren family members, and they believe they actually saw the tornado progress through town. So.
wow. So then, what do? You're out. Yeah. I can't. And for folks that haven't been here, I can't imagine what was going through your mind when you hit 20th Street.
Well, when I pulled up to Station 2, you know, I was obviously shocked at the damage and the destruction. You know, we had 2 engines and a brush rig at that station. One of the engines and the brush rig were completely buried under the rubble of Station 2. There was a white car sitting out in front of the driveway, which I guess had actually been driving down the street. Had gotten lifted up and blown into the station, actually impacted the fire station. When the crew, you know, basically when the tornado had passed and the crew came out of their shelter, they walked out and looked in it, and there was 4 people in it. And
Did they survive? Or?
they did survive. The crew got them out, treated them quickly, and you know, grabbed the pickup truck that I can't remember if it was one of theirs or if it was you know, someone driving by, and transported them down to the hospital.
So the hospital was still up and running. The hospital got back up and running, or?
Well, no, actually the hospital pretty much was devastated once again. You know, very few, if any, windows left in it. Of course, all of the electrical power was down. Their emergency generator was on that north side of the building, so it was down. It had been destroyed. There were several gas leaks within the building, and you know, they were in a pretty rough way when the first folks got there.
Wow.
But transported them over to the other hospital, which is about a quarter mile away, and got them to some care. And then the rest of the crew.
So these guys were improvising, grab a pickup truck, treat
absolutely.
these people, stabilize them, and start moving them.
Yep.
So these are, you know, when people talk about writing protocols and policies and procedures, you can't foresee that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can't. And you know, I've been asked probably a dozen times, you know, did you follow your emergency plan? And you know, I'd love to say yes, we did, but no, we didn't. I mean, this was not written into the emergency plan. You know, we never planned on losing a level 2 trauma center. You know, and having it just completely devastated. You know, losing 2 fire stations.
That would be part of the plan.
Exactly.
We're going to use this level 2 trauma station.
Yeah, we're going to transport people to these 2 facilities,
Right.
and you know, basically that was just wiped off the map.
Now, I heard, and it just, or a segue for a second, that it was actually moved on its foundation. Is that true? Or?
I don't believe it was actually moved. In talking with the engineers that I've talked to with FEMA and that the hospitals, you know, dealt with, I believe it was more twisted. It got kind of a torsion load put on it, then turned about 4 inches.
Still, turning a building 4 inches, that's
and you know, it's probably
that's a stout building.
Absolutely. You know, compared to the building we're in right now, which is you know, a former civil defense fallout shelter with, you know, 3-foot thick floors and walls to withstand a nuclear blast. That was probably the second strongest building in town.
Wow.
You know, probably our only true Type 1 construction building in town. And like I say, it just devastated that building. So,
Wow. So you're out there with the crew of Station 2. They're triage and treating people as they can on the fly.
right.
Were they able to get any of their equipment operational, or they're just their equipment's completely?
Well, we were able to dig out one of the engines. It had been damaged, but we were still able to dig it out and get it into service. It didn't look very good, but it was operational, and we did run out of it for about 3 to 4 days until we could get some replacements in the town. So we did at least have that one available to us for that first, you know, few critical hours.
How long, give us a sense of how long, it was moving about 20 miles an hour, it's 5:40 in the evening. when it had, what time was it when it lifted off and you were able to get in and start to take a look at things? How long was that? About what time of the evening would you be out there on the west side?
You know, probably about 6 o'clock is when we actually, you know, I got the 2 crews started, and I got to start on the windshield survey of it, and you know, so about 20 minutes after the initial touchdown.
So you still had about 2 hours of daylight to...
Yeah, about 2 to 2.5 hours of daylight to try to get a survey done and you know, get some responses started.
And give us a sense of how do you do that? I mean, how do you, as the fire chief, how do you? Yeah, I mean that's the
well,
the cleansing
exactly.
breath. Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's one of those things, and once again, it's one of those things I've probably been asked 100 times of, you know, where do you start? And that's just it. There's so many places to start. You just have to pick somewhere.
Right.
And you know, for us being you know, 5 stations, 5 vehicles, you know, we've got calling crews coming back in, and we've got mutual aid partners coming. But you know, once again, even with everybody that's within 30 miles of me just showing up instantaneously, I still don't have enough people to deal with everybody that needs assistance.
Right.
And
Typical crisis response. You don't have enough folks early on, and then
right.
soon you have more folks than you really want.
Right.
Not that you can manage them, but it becomes a point where you have to tell people, okay, hang on a second here.
Well, and things don't, you know, once you get to that point, things don't move as quickly as what people want to do, you know, want it
Right.
to move, and myself included. You know, we wanted to move through this very quick. We wanted to be very responsive to the citizens' needs, and you know, once you do get that number of crews and you know, helpers in, it does take you a while to get them tasked out, you know, in an effective manner and in a pattern that you can you know, you can check off homes and structures. So
and the weather wasn't cooperating. Like a lot of people picture tornadoes and then the sun
Yeah.
comes out and it's a normal day.
Yeah.
But you were inundated with several storms for several days after this.
yeah, we were in. You know, we dealt with rain probably for the first 30 to 45 minutes following the tornado, and then it did clear off for that night and through part of the next day. You know, that next day we started getting reports of severe weather headed our way, and once again we went under tornado warnings 2 separate times the following night, and. You know, once again, you think, okay, I've gotten hit by this thing, and now, you know, we need that break in the clouds, if you will, to give us time to help folks and to try to recover, and it just didn't happen.
Now, so the tornado has come through.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the windshield survey.
Right.
Your crews are reporting back into the operations chief, and you're
Mm-hmm.
setting up your EOC and
Right.
calling mutual aid and doing all the normal things we would do. How many surface rescues, anecdotally, do you think your folks performed that first evening? Because they must have done hundreds.
Yeah, and you know, that's the bad part is, you know, during those first few hours, you want to try to capture as much of the information as you can, and you know, I don't believe that we're going to ever know truly how many were actually performed, but between you know, the fire, the police, the EMS crews that came into town to assist us, you know, in that first 12 to 24-hour period, I would have to say literally, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of surface rescues, and you know, aid was given to the walking wounded or the or even some of the more severe wounded. You know, not only did the emergency response community, but the citizens in town, you know, were transporting people in pickup trucks or cars or just whatever they had available. You know, trying to get them to either triage areas that we had set up throughout the city, or to the hospitals, or you know, just some sort of a place where they could get care that they needed because of the injuries from the storm.
Well, I was amazed. We arrived Monday morning about 10 a.m. How many of the streets you had cleared? I mean,
Right.
Clearly your public works department did an outstanding job
Yeah.
of clearing the roads, because
Yeah.
you know, the emergency responders and the traffic was moving well, and your law enforcement people did an exemplary job, because
Yep.
every intersection had officers at it who were
Yeah.
managing the traffic flow and doing
Yep.
a wonderful job. And you know, we saw a lot of your mutual aid crews and a lot of your folks working, you know, trying to do searches.
Right.
So how do you, if you give us a sense that night starts to fall, you know, you recognize you're been hit by an incredible act of nature. how many homes, you know now exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but how many homes, give people a sense, I mean, it's a third of the community.
Right.
How many homes?
You know, what we're hearing now from FEMA is, and from our planners and our building staff is right around 8,000 living structures. So, you know, that's homes and apartments, individual apartments. So, you know, if you will, we've got, you know, over 8,000, because obviously a lot of those have more than one person living there. As a matter of fact, for the city, what they estimated was about 2.5 people per structure. So, you know, if you take that, you know, you've got 16, 18,000 people
Right.
displaced.
And then there's nursing homes and places where your density is much higher. And
Exactly.
my goodness. And
So.
churches and everything else.
Yeah. You know, once again, this was a Sunday night. You know, not only are we in the middle of Tornado Alley, but we're in the Bible Belt.
Right.
So very religious and
Sure.
and God-fearing, you know, population. And you know, a lot
Evening
of people were at
services,
church.
yeah,
and,
5 o'clock, 5:30 evening services.
yeah, so a lot of people were either on their way to or were at church, or, you know, of course with the high school graduation on, a significant amount of the population was out there. You know, there was some, you know, 4,000 to 5,000 people at the graduation ceremony. So.
Now, do you think that helped you, Chief, in terms of having some folks? Now, was the high school area with the notifications went out twice?
Right.
So, did the people at the high school get those notifications as well? Did they?
Well,
Did they know what was going on?
Yeah, luckily graduation was out at our college, local university that is on the north part of town. So the high school was actually empty at the time, which was once again a blessing for us and for the community.
Did it get devastated, or?
Yes, the high school's been destroyed, suffered significant damage, and as well as a technical school that's next door to it. So, you know, if we would have been having the graduation ceremonies there, you know, I think the death toll would have probably been significantly higher than what it currently is. So, you know, a little bit of luck that rode along with us that night, and you know, I'm very glad that that graduation was over, you know, at Missouri Southern instead of at the high school.
So that helped keep some folks out of harm's way, and then the warnings that went out. And there was some stuff on the MSNBC and some of the major networks where they implied that folks may have ignored the warnings, but I don't think that's. I don't think the. No disrespect to East Coast folks. I was raised there, but I don't think they understand what people do to take cover here.
Right.
In the Midwest. I mean, people took cover as best they could. This was just a storm of unimaginable power.
That's right, and you know, living in the Midwest, you know, tornado warnings and thunderstorm warnings are pretty much a part of daily routine.
It's a way of life. Sure.
It is. It's a way of life. It's just like if you live on the coast with hurricanes. You know, it's a very common occurrence for the folks in Florida and you know the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. You know, around here it's not unusual. You know, in the weeks since then, you know, we probably had 20 different thunderstorm warnings since then, and you know, and probably about 6 or so tornado warnings have been issued just since May 22nd. So it's a very normal mode of life for the Midwest and any of the communities around here. To say that people ignored the warning, I don't know that would be fair to say, but like once again, they are very much a part of normal life.
Right.
So you know, did the warning send that first warning at about 20 to 25 minutes before the storm impacted us? Did people start scrambling for cover then? And I think that the obvious answer is no.
Well, and I think that people need to understand too, when a tornado warning comes out, they don't say it's going to go down, you know, between 3rd Street and 20th Street, and it's not that precise.
Yeah.
You know, so the warning is just basically to raise your awareness level. So folks do, you know, they make sure that the water's in the closet or wherever they're going to take cover, and that they, you know,
Sure.
it's to give people an awareness level. It's not specific, because.
Right.
And with this tornado, even if you knew it was coming, it's a mile wide.
Exactly.
Where are you going to go?
Exactly. And The second warning that was about 3 minutes before the tornado struck the city, in talking with folks afterwards, that first warning, everybody was aware. They started watching the weather and those types of things. The second one, I heard, numerous more people were headed for cover and taking shelter. But once again, the weather had deteriorated significantly, obviously, in those 20 minutes since the first one.
You said your son and your wife thought they saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen one.
Neither have I.
Yeah, which is, because people always ask me, what does it look like? How would they describe it? Because what I've heard is that it just looks like really dark cloud, and it's
and that's pretty much, they just described it as a dark shadow that was moving across town.
wow.
Of course, they were extraordinarily scared when they saw it, and I can only imagine. I mean, it had to be an extremely terrifying ordeal to either see it, number one, or to actually live through it and to be in it. And
Well, even just to be, as you are, the fire chief and responsible for all these good folks with all these gas leaks now, and you're doing your windshield survey, and you had 2 fire stations that were impacted, isn't that correct?
That's right. Shortly after getting out to 2 and checking on them, of course, we heard from Fire Station 4 saying that they had been hit, and once again, their vehicles were destroyed as well. And it was a significant impact to us, and it definitely hampered our response capabilities. I got a hold of our captain and our battalion chief on the radio from Station 4, and their vehicle was inoperable. And so we just basically salvaged some of the EMS equipment and the rescue equipment that we could, threw it in one of the personal pickups of the captain that actually ended up being destroyed as well, and just driving it to different sites where we had people trapped and trying to effect rescues. So
Now, after you did the windshield survey and you knew what you were up against, or had to start to formulate in your mind what you were up against,
right.
Where did you go after that? Over to the EOC, or where did you report in?
Yeah, we came back to the EOC, and during that windshield survey, I'd gotten a hold of the city manager. We had met up on Main Street about the middle of the devastation, and actually he and I performed a few rescues of our own while we were out doing the window survey.
Wow.
Pulling some folks out of some basements and then out of a collapsed church as we were doing the...
I'll never say anything bad about a city manager again.
He was a real trooper,
Was
and he got thrust into some situations that he's not used to dealing with.
Sure.
And I think he had told me that it was the first time he'd actually seen folks that had been deceased, without being through, like a mortuary's handling
Right.
or whatever.
Right. Real true victims.
The true victims, and we saw dozens that night, and I know it's affected him, and he asks us, how do you guys do that? And it's just unfortunately it's a part of the job and the job requirements for the fire service or EMS or police to see that. And I think he's got a much better understanding now of what we do and what we deal with. And so I feel bad for putting him in that situation, but at the same point in time, I think we affected the rescue of several folks from, like I said, from a couple of basements and from a church that had collapsed on some people. So
Wow.
it was also a good part of our survey. But once we got done with that, we did come back down here. We laid out a basic path of the storm and started getting our GIS folks to drawing us some maps and some grids to start getting some grid searches set up. So, within about an hour and a half of the storm, we had a general path of the tornado, we had a general area that was affected, and we had a grid plan getting set up via our GIS folks to get out to the responders. So we could start to get some kind of, some sort of order to the search patterns and to where we'd been and where we still needed to go.
And it reminds me, when you're talking now, John Hanson, who's a great friend of mine in Oklahoma City, went through the devastating F5 that went right through the heart. And like you, John lost his home, lost everything. And he said, initially, it's windshield surveys, surface rescues,
Right.
trying to assess what do we have here, what do we need, what's our what's our damage and what's our plan going to be.
Right.
And for you, it's got to be even more intricate in a way, because for the Oklahoma City people, lots more resources, a much contoured. Joplin, Missouri is a rolling, hilly area. A lot of people picture the Midwest as all flat, like Illinois, Indiana, and cornfields.
Right.
This is a very contoured city with beautiful hills and little valleys. So you really needed to drive that 14 miles in order to understand
Right.
what had happened. So you've done that, and you're back here. Now, the city manager assumes the role of incident commander, or how do you operationalize from that point?
Pretty much what we did is, of course, he was, as the city manager, he's in
Right.
charge of the overall city.
Right, he's the final call.
Right, but he turned to me basically, and asked, "What do we do?"
Right.
And
What's that incident command thing you've been talking about?
exactly, and that's I was talking with Greg Gaines from the U.S. Fire Administration yesterday, and I told him, I said, I just completed my EFO certification, and I told him, I said, when I was up at Emmitsburg in my 3rd year going through EFSM, I'm sitting there thinking, boy, we'll never do anything like this, and that's some words I've ate now, but that was an extraordinarily helpful class, and I was so glad that I'd been through it, because it did help me think ahead to not only what I needed to do in the next 12 to 24 hours, but what I needed to do past that, and what resources I needed to get started towards towards the city, and so we sat down and basically on a whiteboard with the department heads we had in, which was about half of them at that time, started to outline what are our first immediate needs, and of course the first one was search, rescue, and medical care for the citizens that were affected. Secondly was getting some sort of a coordinated search to go house to house to search those homes that were affected, and then third was to start providing shelter for the citizens that had lost their homes but were okay.
Potentially 16 to 20,000 people.
Exactly. Starting trying to get them shelter, and so we started with that initial list, and then moved on from there. I think once we saw the level of devastation in the probably the 4 to 5 miles that we drove, it was obvious that we were going to have a significant amount of injuries. It was obvious we were going to have a significant amount of dead, and it was obvious that this had outgrown not only our local capabilities of our local department, and then our normal mutual aid partners, but it had outgrown our regional planning and probably our state planning, because of just the number of affected residents, individuals, and just the amount of devastation. I mean, it just, you go out and you go to search this stuff, and it's not just like lifting up something and looking under it. This is intertwined, locked together debris.
Right, it's not a collapse in any kind of traditional way.
Exactly.
It's not structural collapse from some faulty component, or even fire damage where you can get pancakes and
Right.
lean-tos. This is like a blender.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've heard it called. I mean, it's just like taking, a 6.5 mile long, mile wide section of a city, throwing everything into a blender and hitting liquefy.
Yeah. And it's very heartening to hear you say, in my EFO training, my emergency management preparedness classes that I took came into play and made a significant difference, because oftentimes people ask us, why do you train so much? Why is that so important? And I tell them, you have to train every day because of problems like this. No one could foresee the types of rescues your folks would have to perform, crimping gas lines, which I'm sure they had to do. I mean, you can't, there's no more just isolated problems. It's not, everyone has to become a MacGyver of a sorts.
Exactly.
And that requires training, innovation, confidence, and the ability to act without permission, and, which is great. We were speaking earlier about, did we follow the plan? The best plan is to have well-trained people and trust them.
Exactly, and that's what I was talking with yesterday when Chief Gaines called, and I told him, I said, I think that the thing that contributed the most to the successes that everybody are telling us that we had here is the fact that you know, not only in my department, but in other departments around us within our region and within the city and within the city leadership, we have the right people in the right jobs performing the right work, and that was just so critical to what we've been able to do here in the last 5 weeks since the storm. And I can tell you, within my department, I knew that once I got my deputy chief, my operations chief, my battalion chief, you know, lined out on where I wanted to go, that I didn't need to check on them or micromanage them. I knew them, I trusted them, and I counted on them to get the tasks done. And that freed me up to look at the larger picture of, okay, they're taking care of the here and now. Where are we going to be 12 hours from now, or 24 hours from now, or 48 hours from now? It allowed me to do that future planning to get them resources and equipment and get their needs taken care of when those times came. So it was extraordinarily valuable to have those well-trained and once again, those people that were able to improvise and respond to the incident at hand, because you know, like you say, there's no way you can predict this. There's no way you can even, you know, the human mind, I don't think, can imagine an event like this. And you've got to just be in kind of reaction mode. You know, if you're looking for everything written out in a plan, it wasn't there, and I can't produce it.
Right.
You know, a lot of what we were doing was reactive by what we knew we needed to do and what we knew was right to do. And once again, having those people that were capable, that were well trained, and that were trusted to do the job, I think, you know, not only within my department but within the city and within the region, really are the ones that spelled the success to this. You know, more so than just, you know, my role. I mean, I've been the very public figure of the fire response here in town, but that's it. I mean, I honestly, you know, depended, counted on all of the folks, not only within my department, but regionally. You know, we've been working on regional planning for events and with other departments, both Springfield, Missouri, Branson, Missouri. We've worked regionally since you know, 2002, and all of that planning, all of that time getting to know folks and getting to know capabilities really paid off in this event.
Having good neighbors and good relationships with those neighbors really is the key. And I think
Absolutely.
one of the things that we talk about all the time when we talk about training is one of the most critical things we develop in training is trust for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Anart de Peek who said, 4 brave men who do not know each other well won't attack a lion, but 4 less brave men, mutually assured of each other's, you know, reliability and trust, knowing each other, will attack resolutely.
Right.
So developing those relationships is so critical. And you see some departments that are silos. We're not going to need anybody's help.
Yeah.
That's a bad plan. And you guys, fortunately, didn't have that mindset.
Right.
Joplin's a very warm community to begin with, but your organization and you, obviously, and your men and women are those kinds of folks too. Yeah. It's, you know, you're very warm, very open, very gracious people, and so I think that probably played a lot into how well things went, and things did go well. I mean, we arrived 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was a beehive of activity, and all those bees were wearing either yellow gear or black gear, and they were going through the buildings one by one, and the markings were on the buildings. And this is less than 12 hours after, maybe 14 hours after you had been hit, and so much work had already been done. It was just amazing to see. And I think that the training aspect there is huge, and it really came through. Let's talk a minute about your men and women, because I think it's important that folks know 4 of your folks besides yourself, so 5 total, or
3 besides me.
Lost everything.
That's correct.
Homes are gone.
Yes.
So right now you guys are living in temporary conditions and temporary.
Yeah, you know, either with friends or family, or you know, they've gotten a rental of some sort. You know, kind of like with me, I'm in a duplex right now, a fairly small duplex compared to you know, the size of our home before. So
you're looking down the barrel of a week to 10 days of nonstop work, and your wife has to, and your children have to figure out where we're going to sleep.
Right.
How do you manage that, Chief?
Well, you know, the first couple 3 nights, we basically, my office was our home. and my wife and kids stayed in there with me. And you know, it's not a big office. It's maybe 15 by 15, and you know, the four of us were sleeping and basically using that as our home.
Wow.
You know, after about the third or fourth day, you know, they moved to be with my sister and live in her basement for about another week. And you know, lucky one of the county commissioners had a duplex that came open and available, and you know, we were able to move into it. You know, they basically call a place that, you know, somewhere that we could live. And my daughter keeps telling me, she goes, "This is not home. This is not home." And you know, it's one of those things that. You know, it's the only home that my two kids have known is the house that we lived in, and you know, we've basically lived there since they were born, and so they don't know anything else.
Right.
So, and you know, that's why she was saying that. And you know, it's very much the same with my crews as well that lost their home. You know, both of them had been there for you know, some time, and you know, they all had families to look after and children to look after as well. And so you know, after that first initial 12 hours or so, you know, my first concern was to get them out of here and to get them home to take care of you know, those personal issues, and we did that the next morning. They had all reported to work, or they were either at work or reported to work with the general call in. But that next morning, once we got through that first push and got you know, the service rescues and those types of things done, I got them out of here so they could take care of their home life and get you know, get their loved ones taken care of.
With 153 dead and thousands injured, how are your men and women doing? How is your department doing? Did you do anything special? Did you bring in counseling, or are they just using the churches and the, you know, how are they? I mean, they must have known dozens of those good folks. These are their neighbors and their cousins and relatives. I mean,
yeah. You know, we've kind of used a variety of different methods for the crews. You know, we've had some actual debriefings with you know, some pastors that are, you know, fire department specific trained, and I think those were attended by a few. You know, most have sought their own either counseling or you know, debriefings through their own churches. Like I said, Joplin's a very religious community, and so I think everybody's been.
But that's
kinda,
important. I think
yeah.
that's an important point. And the faith, it's amazing how important faith is in disasters, and how important faith is, I think, to the fire service as a whole, to people who do, like your city manager, to see that amount of death, people who a half hour earlier were coming home from church or coming home from the store or
Right.
getting ready to make Sunday dinner, dead, gone, whole families in some cases,
Yeah.
lost. And then some of the folks literally lost, just gobbled up by this horrible act of nature, you know,
Right.
gone. You have to believe in more than just the temporal. You have to have faith.
Yeah, you have to believe in more than yourself. I mean, and I think,
Sure.
you know, I think that's what's kept our department going, and
not to be overly religious, I'm very religious, and I know
Yeah.
many firefighters are, and I think it helps me. I know it helped me in my career, and I think that living in a place like Joplin, where you do have plenty of pastors and reverends and priests and
Yeah.
that you can talk to, and,
Right.
and those people are trained.
yeah, and I agree. You know, it's like I say, it's about being more than just you, but it's more than about the individual. And
Survivor's guilt.
exactly.
Your home is a block off the path of the tornado, and you're fine, and folks you've known for your whole life are gone.
Yeah, and you know, so I think it does. It's got to help, and I mean, you know, I think that you know, a good majority of the firefighters here are you know, very religious in nature, and I think it does give them strength to move on through these things.
You know, I think it's important. I hope the folks listening, the young people who run academies, and we should encourage it and not promote Episcopalians or Methodists or Catholics or whatever you happen to be, but promote faith. You know, tell people, you know, if you have faith, hang on to it. If you don't, take a look at it. It's something. Believe in something. Even if you want to go to Unitarian churches or whatever you want to do, but believe in something greater than yourself.
Absolutely, and I think that you know, anyone in the fire service or public service needs to remember that it's more than just about the individual. It's not about me. It's about the community. It's about the bigger picture. It's about what we can do for others, and I think that religious belief and religious feeling plays into that very well, and it's about service. And when you talk to any of the major religions, as you say, and whether regardless of what your individual belief is, it's all about service to others and about self-sacrifice. And I mean, if there's anything that says the fire service, that's it.
That's exactly. That could make a good EFO paper if anybody out there is going through EFO right now. That would.
Yeah.
Faith in its role in the fire service, or its impact in the fire service. So it's now 4 weeks.
Going on 5, but
going
yes.
on 5, 4.5, 5 weeks. How is Joplin right now, and what's the how do you predict the recovery? How long do you think the recovery is going to go, and what's the plans for your department, for your organization?
Well, I think if you look out through the community, there's still a huge amount of volunteers coming in and lending a hand, and you still see neighbors helping neighbors, and I think it's just fantastic to see. If you look at the amount of destruction and the devastation, I don't think you can look at it and say, hey, in 6 months we're going to be fine. I think everybody knows that that's not going to be the case.
It's got to be a 20-year plan, really, I think.
Exactly, and that's early on. I had some folks asking about, what are you going to do about replacing fire stations and fire trucks and those types of things. And I said, and I believe this, not only for the fire service, for what I'm deciding with the fire service, but it's what the city manager and the council and our planners are deciding about the community. We're not affecting this year or next year or the next several months. I'm looking 50 years into the future. Where do I need to be? Where is this department moving? What are the pieces of apparatus we're going to need in the future? Because we have this, while it's been a horrible event, we have this opportunity to, misplaced fire stations. If we have a fire station that's a duplication and can be moved into a better area to serve the community better, now's the time.
Right.
If we're looking at switching to a different type of vehicle or different capabilities, once again, now's the time.
You have discretionary time now to make decisions based upon long-range planning, where
exactly.
Sometimes as a city grows, it's just a fire station seemed like a good idea in 1960, but in 2010, not such a good idea.
Right.
Either the demographics didn't work out the way they had predicted, or
yeah.
So you do have an opportunity to move some equipment if it's appropriate to do so.
Right, and that's what we're looking at now for the fire department. Is we're looking at where the city is projected to grow, where we're headed, where we have grown since since these stations were built and put in place. So we are taking that all in consideration. I think the other thing, the city right now has a moratorium on residential construction. And once again, it's to look at those issues. Do we want to build everything back to 1940 standards? And I think that the first reaction of everybody is, well, we need to be rebuilding, and I don't disagree. But we need to do it smart, and we need to do it with some thought and some planning. And I don't think anyone would want us just to go back and put back exactly what was there. I think they would want us to look at improvements and to consider basically the future and the next 50 to 100 years when we're planning neighborhoods and facilities and public services. We can't just turn a blind eye to the future, because before we know it, that future will be here.
And this
we'll be living in it.
this is a great place to live. This is an incredible part of the United States. If you haven't been into, I guess this is southwestern Missouri. This is gorgeous country, a breathtaking country.
Yeah.
What does the Joplin Fire Department need? Right, people want to do things for you, and people keep talking about this. What does Joplin really need, and what does the Joplin Fire Department really need?
Well, I think
what would help?
Right now we're still working on the insurance settlements and those types of things from the destroyed stations and the apparatus and those types of things. And so, we currently have loaner stations that are going up right now by the Army Corps of Engineers that are being built as we speak, and we hope to be occupying those by the end of the week. We've got loaner equipment from Pierce and Rosenbauer Mid-America Fire Equipment here in the state, and the Department of Conservation has helped us out with some vehicles. And, so right now, where that goes, we're doing pretty well. You know, I think the thing that's going to come out in the future is going to be the overall cost of this disaster. You know, they typically talk about disasters in millions of dollars. I heard very early on billions of dollars, and you know, billions of dollars is just one of those things until you sit down and start typing out the zeros on a calculator or something. You don't realize how much money that is.
That's 9 zeros. That's
Yeah,
big money.
That's big money, and you know, just within the fire department, by the time that we replace, you know, fire stations and fire apparatus and gear that was lost and you know, equipment, you know, we're looking at you know, probably tens of millions of dollars just in what we lost in order to replace it in today's value. So. You know, some of that's going to be covered by insurance, but obviously not all of it. Some of it's going to be covered by FEMA, but once again, obviously not all of it. You know, most of our immediate needs are met, but what we're going to need for the future rebuilding is going to be, and I hate to sound bad about this, and I feel guilty even saying it, but it's going to be cash. It's going to be money.
Right.
You know, to pay for this new equipment, to pay for those differences.
Well, is there somewhere where people can go online or something if they want to make a donation to the Joplin Fire Department, or is there anything set up like that yet, Chief, or to the city of Joplin?
Yeah, the city does have a couple of funds set up, and I don't think there's a fire department specific one. Once again, because of the way we're set up,
Right.
you know, we are a city, so
Right.
it all goes into
The general
the
fund.
general fund, and all, but. So I do know there is one. I'll get you one before we leave.
Okay, because we were correct on that. Our initial report from there was all well-intentioned, but we don't need box loads of clothes. We don't need, you know, what people wanted to give away.
Right.
We need cash.
Right.
And that's going to sustain Joplin into the future.
Yep. Yeah, most of those immediate needs were met very quickly within the first you know, week or so, and
we'll put that out. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll build that into the presentation. We'll make sure that people know in the beginning and the end how they can contribute to support.
Sure.
So you're doing okay?
You know, we're trying. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, my family and I are a couple weeks behind the curve, as you know, because of the workload that was there for the first couple 3 weeks, and so we're in catch-up mode. We're still sorting through what we were able to salvage from the house, and I say we, my wife and kids were able to salvage with the help of my folks and you know, my brothers and sisters, and then you know, several of the union members from around the region came in to help us. You know, I have to admit I salvaged very little from my house. You know, these folks that came in did that for us. So, you know, once again, that's kind of where we are. We're waiting on some insurance settlements and those types of things once again, and you know, trying to get our lives kind of back on track and back to normal. And you know, I guess my goal on a personal level is to be able to give my daughter a place to call home.
Well, we hope you do that real soon, and we really want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today and allow us to have access to your staff and to your city. We know that you've got much better things to do than to sit and talk with us, but we thought it was important for you to get your story out to the fire service so that people could hear what it's like and how important it is to train, to be prepared, to lead well, and to be ready. All over the country right now, there's the floods up in Minot and the horrible fire in Los Alamos. Again, they're being hit again with a terrible. You know, I was there at the first Los Alamos fire. Now the second one's coming. So you never know. And being prepared is not just a motto for the American Fire Service. It's got to be a credo. It's got to be you know, something we live by and live up to. And certainly, you and your organization exceeded anyone's expectations in terms of excellence and dedication and preparedness, and it came through. And the level of professionalism that you and your troops showed was just amazing. And you know, our hearts broke when we saw the damage, and they're still breaking. I think Americans were just devastated to see such a beautiful community take such a dramatic hit, but we were also heartened to see that true American values came out, and you guys and gals really set a bar for the rest of the nation, and we thank you for that. And
thank
if
you.
there's anything we can do for you at any time, please don't hesitate to call on us.